We are live streaming. My name is Kay. I'm joined by my colleague, Marion Noble. It is great to have you all here today. We're going to have an awesome presentation. We're going to talk about a topic that is on a lot of people's mind right now. How do you keep your job during a recession? Which the cool thing about this topic is it doubles as a second topic, which is how do you kick ass in your job, right? So even if you're not afraid of the economic calamity that is this slow-moving train wreck that is currently happening, we are going to leave you with actionable steps that you can take to future-proof your career, to make yourself resilient, to make yourself help yourself get paid more, get promoted more, without selling your soul and burning yourselves out. So without any further ado, here's how it's going to roll. We've got a short presentation. Instagram folks, sorry, but log into the Zoom if you want to see the slides. And then we'll just open it up. We've got a smallish group here. So we're just going to do the good old fashioned Zoom hand raise, and we can talk about any of these different topics. So without any further ado, for those of you on the chat, drop into on the Zoom, drop into the chat. Tell us where you're joining from, how you spend your time, what your job is, and what's one behavior that you do that makes you more valuable to your employer, makes your career more indestructible, right? So what's one of your superpowers, right? What's one of your professional superpowers? That would be a better way of saying that. So drop that into the chat. Again, we're going to do formal introductions, going to launch into the presentation and start with the screen sharing.
Yeah, and as you're getting that set up, just a reminder, if you are watching on any of the platforms, you can drop your questions in and I'll pass them along to Kay for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you. And that is my colleague, Marion Noble, a product manager for RadReads. So yeah, hello Twitter people, hello LinkedIn people. First time we're doing this on LinkedIn. What's up Instagram people coming in on this side camera. All right, how to keep your job in a recession. We've got a live Q&A discussion and Q&A, and again, we're going to be together for the next hour or so. So let us jump in. First, briefly, for those, the off chance you don't know RadReads, you don't know myself, you don't know Marion, my name is Kay He. I'm the founder and CEO of RadReads, which is a blog, a newsletter, and an education company targeting, working with high achieving and kind professionals, like all of you on this call, on this live stream. We run a series of trainings. We have built digital products, and we do one-on-one coaching around this, around our mission statement, which I will show you in a second. But in another life, we're going to talk about another life. I used to work on Wall Street. I was kind of a burnt out finance person. I'm a semi-recovering productivity bro, an avid surfer who surfed 1,000 days in the past since 2018. And as my daughters remind me, I tell a lot of dad jokes. So our mission at RadReads is to help you, all of you watching this, lead more productive, examined, and joyful lives. And I like to illustrate that with a simple Venn diagram, right? Most of the stuff, a lot of the stuff that you read in the bubble of Twitter and on social media is around productivity, right? And productivity is important, but it's like water, or it's like money, or it's like ambition, right? It's a means to an end. It's not the end. You don't, on your tombstone, it won't say, Kay He was the most productive human on the planet, which I'm not, and I hope it will never say that. Productivity is one piece of the equation. And if you only focus on productivity, you get the 5 a.m. frog eaters, right? They're like, wake up at 5, take a cold shower, bullet journal, meditate, and do all of that. And you will have won the day, right? So those are the productivity. That's the productivity side, which we want to stay away from in isolation. The next part is living an examined life. We teach and discuss a lot of life philosophy. What do you stand for? What motivates you? What does it mean to make an impact, right? That's the examine part. But if you only focus on examining your life, then you're kind of a woo navel gazer, right? So that's why we combine that with the productivity piece. And then lastly, joy, right? What's the point of doing it? What's the point of being alive if there's no joy, right? So a joyful life. And again, if you only focus on joy, you can be caught in the trap of positive psychology, The Secret, and all of that kind of stuff. So we put these all together, and this is the Rad Read ethos. All right, I'm going to jump back, rewind the clock, and have you meet this guy. This was, this was me, probably, I was 32 years old in that picture, so 11 years ago. I worked on Wall Street for 14 years. Did that whole thing, got promoted many times. My mom still keeps all of my business cards on a desk at home. Was promoted to managing director using a lot of the tactics that we're going to talk about today. In fact, I had, when 2008 happened, the global financial crisis, which I suspect was much gnarlier when it's all said and done than the current crisis that we're in. 2008 and onwards launched the greatest stretch of my career professionally. I got promoted. I made great money. I was given a lot of new responsibility, and it set me up to take a big risk and take a bet on myself to start Rad Reads, move by the beach, and surf every day. So we're going to talk about these things because I live them, I coach them, I manage teams, I've researched them, I've written about them, I've interviewed people about them. So let's go in and talk about these 7 tactics, right? So we're going to give you a 7-step plan. We're going to go through each tactic with a couple of minutes, and I hope you're ready because there's going to be homework, right? We don't want to just talk at you. We want to talk to you. We want you to take action, right? We're not here just to intellectually navel gaze. We are here to take action. And so we're not going to be checking in on the homework, but we're going to give you homework on for each of these categories. So we're going to go through these 7 plans. This was actually in a blog post, so you can, Marion will or has dropped in that post already, but we're going to talk about these 7 steps. What are the 7 steps? Be your boss's Tylenol. That's the first one. The second one is be visible. Toot your own horn. Number 3, your network is your moat. This is probably our favorite topics, one of our favorite topics here at Rad Reads. Number 4, find your leverage. You might know 10K work, how to scale yourself, how to ruthlessly prioritize, right? We are being asked to do more with less right now. And so prioritization and leverage are going to be key. Developing what we call adjacent skills, and talk a little bit about AI and becoming the resident tech expert. And then lastly, establishing thought leadership. So before we're going to dive in. And again, for those of you watching on Twitter, on Instagram, or on LinkedIn, you could also drop into the Zoom call where we'll be able to directly field your questions, or you can ask them in app, and then Marion will relay them to me. Everything going smooth, Marion?
Super shout out to Shubham on LinkedIn. He was introducing himself, and we already are queuing up some questions. So let's dive in.
All right, let's dive in. Be your boss's Tylenol. Step 1, right? Okay. Everyone has a boss, right? The college graduate has a boss. The middle manager has a boss. The CEO has a boss, reports to the board. The chairman of the board has a boss. Everyone has a boss. Now, this is a simple trick. This is a more protective maneuver, which is to recognize that the person who would lay you off, or who would have say in layoffs, is the person that you report to. So the easiest way to do that is to make yourself indispensable towards your boss, right? When they're going through all the lists of people that they could choose to let go of, your boss, if you make your boss's life easier, if you're their Tylenol, then chances are you're going to be the last on the chopping block. Like, this is how you become, and you can look at it the other way from an offensive perspective. The person who makes their boss looks better is more likely to get promoted and move up in the company, right? So what does that mean? So first of all, this does not mean become a doormat, right? This does not mean burn yourself out, work yourself to the ground and raise your hand and say yes to everything. However, there is a strategy involved here. There is a tactic involved here. And the tactic is to just look at your boss's weaknesses, or look at where they struggle, look at where their workflow is broken, right? And then step in and do that. So I'll give you a very, very specific example. My boss and many bosses, because they tend to be older, are terrible at task management. So one of my bosses was terrible at task management. So what I did, and we worked on so many projects together, is I would basically keep a shadow list. I would basically keep a shadow list of his tasks. And every time we would speak, which could be, definitely every day, I would just say like, hey, we have this meeting coming up in a week. Have you started to work on this? Or, this deadline is around the corner. Have you checked this up? Have you checked this document? Right? Now you might say like, my job is not to be my boss's executive assistant or assistant, but that's missing the point, right? Because by doing that, you are giving your boss leverage. You are making them better. In theory, then you're making your team better. And it's a very, very simple thing, right? Bosses tend to be pretty disorganized. So that is your first assignment, is to think about the shortcomings and challenges where they struggle, particularly in their workflow, not necessarily in their skill base, and think about how you could supplement that with a wiki, a workflow tool, just some like good list keeping, right? Some accountability and some check-ins. That way, they'll wake up, their boss will wake up, your boss will wake up 6 months later and be like, oh my God, I don't know how I could function without this person by my side, right? So that's step one, be the Tylenol. All right, we saw a few people migrate in, probably from some of the social channels. Welcome to you all. We're going through the 7 steps of keeping your job and growing your career during a recession. All right.
Just so you know, Kay, we've lost you on Instagram, but we're still on YouTube and LinkedIn.
Oh, no. Oh, that's why. My screen time password.
Oh, you hit your screen time. You can't do Instagram anymore.
I have a 7-minute screen time password, and my wife knows it. So only my wife knows the password. So I'd have to leave the stage to get the password updated, which I'm not going to do. Okay. Step 2, be visible. Now, I know that some people are going to say, I don't want to brag. I know some people are more introverted. I know some people are outright shy. Some people might be, if you're too vocal, you may be accused of being too loud or too boisterous. So approach all of this with some delicacy and some prudence. But the reality is that especially when things are choppy, everyone is just heads down, right? They're not like scanning the periphery for, how their direct reports are doing in this obscure corner of project land. So you have to make yourself visible. And I hate to say this, I hate that this is happening. I'm not beholden to this, but it's a big part of this is getting back into the office. Right. And so if you are in some hybrid arrangement, this is a trade-off that you'll have to evaluate. People are paying attention to who's in front of them, right? We're humans. We don't, when you're not in front of us, when you're not talking about us, it's very easy to forget about you. So don't assume that you'll be seen. Don't assume that your work will be seen. So make sure that you document your wins. Keep a log of your wins. That way, when you go into a touch base, a one-on-one, a quarterly review, that you can go in and say, look, this is everything that I've done. You're not bragging. You're just reminding people of what you've done. A lot of times your bosses will appreciate that because they don't have the mental bandwidth to do that, right? Be careful to not come across as too braggy, because that can also hurt you in the other direction. And your homework assignment on this, we're going to drop in an article that I wrote years ago, is a process I call managing up, right? Don't assume that your boss or the person above you knows what you're working on. So the managing up email is a very simple email. At the end of the week, it should take you like 5-7 minutes. You send a Slack message, send an email to your boss that says, hey, just a heads up, here's what I worked on. Here's what's still open. And here's where I need you to unblock me or to help me, right? It's that simple. It's not obtrusive. It's not humble bragging. It is just, here is the lay of the land. And I promise you, people love concise summaries where the information is pushed to them versus them having to ask, hey, where's that thing? Hey, did you work on that? So be visible. Let your inner humble brag loose a little bit, because people are not, again, people are very distracted when there's a lot going on in the economy in their companies. All right, number 3. This is a huge one. We have entire courses dedicated to this, but learn how to network, right? If you have a very powerful network, if you have access to information, access to opportunities, access to other people, you become very, very critical and indispensable to a firm, right? Or to a company. So an interesting principle here which was coined by a sociologist by the name of Mark Granspotter, I think his name is to cultivate your weak ties, right? So we often think of networking as, oh, my college buddies or, oh, my coworkers, but weak ties are actually that random friend of yours that you went to camp with when you're in high school, or the person that you always see at a conference. So you're not texting, DMing regularly, but there is some affiliation in your interest set, in your industry set, right? So think about these weak ties and think about how you can grow your network. Now, the thing about networking is that a lot of people take a very icky and transactional approach to it. It's always about me, 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 me. What can I get from you? What can I get from you? How can I optimize you? Well, how can you help me, right? I want you to turn that playbook upside down and start from a place of care, start from a place of generosity, start from a place of love, right? Where you go around and you help people, right? I remember when I was on Wall Street, I had a budget in my head, a time budget, where I would spend an hour like doing someone else's work outside of my company, doing someone's work, helping them. So the most common example would be I would review, I was in a business where people were constantly pitching themselves, pitching their investments. So I would tell my friends and my contacts, if you ever want someone to give you a quick review of your pitch, just shoot it over to me. And I would spend, 20 minutes on the weekend just giving some high level comments on it, right? So you start from a place from a generosity, and then it boomerangs back to you in countless ways. So we're going to share a few posts on that. Marion, I didn't put it on the list, but we have the super connectors post as well that could be helpful to the audience. And then we have something that I call MBIs. These are mutually beneficial introductions. This is where you take two people who you think would benefit from knowing one another and you introduce them. Now, the number one thing that you must do is you have to always do the double opt-in, which is basically check with each person that they actually want to meet each other. They have the time, because then it can get super awkward super quickly, right? So always, before you introduce two people, and then while it might be tempting to say like, oh, Joe is a lawyer and Jill is a lawyer, so let me introduce two lawyers. Like, yes, that could be cool, but I would encourage you to go out one ring of personality beyond what they do for work. So you might say like, oh, this person, Joe, is really interested in the Stoic philosophy. And Jane is really interested in, effective altruism, but they both love philosophy. And while they happen to be lawyers, what the thing that they're always passionate about, thinking about, talking about, reading about is philosophy. That would be a way to introduce them. Again, you send an email to each of them, say, hey, I think you would really benefit from meeting my friend Joe. You'd really benefit from meeting my friend Jane. you both have this kind of quirky passion and philosophy. I want to see where that goes. Send an introduction, they hop on a Zoom call, they grab a drink together. And that is how you continue to build these weak ties and really do it from a place of care, from a place of service, and from a place of generosity. All right. Finding your leverage and prioritizing ruthlessly. Again, we are being asked to do more with less. Teams, colleagues are getting let go. We are not over hiring. We're not backfilling those positions. And on top of that, goals are being stretched. Goals are harder to hit because of everything that's happening in the economy. This is our proprietary, time-tested framework for prioritization. We have tons of trainings on this. We have an entire course on this if this resonates. Our course is called Supercharge Your Productivity, but this is our philosophy to really get you into that top right quadrant of high skill, high leverage work. Remember, not all tasks are created equally. An hour updating a report is very different than an hour developing a PR strategy, right? It's still an hour, very different outcomes, very different leverage, right? So you need to identify what those activities are, what we call 10K work, and then plan your day accordingly. Okay. Next, we have you can identify leverage using the 80-20 rule. Again, this is a way to kind of distill an activity to its essence, to the thing that really moves the needle. And remember, efficiency and efficacy or effectiveness are not the same thing. Efficiency is when you squeeze water out of a stone, and effectiveness is when you move the needle on the thing that actually matters. So pay attention to that differential. Your homework here. Oh, on the last slide, I forgot to say your homework was to make 2 of those mutually beneficial introductions. And we dropped in a blog post so you can familiarize yourself with that in more detail. Your activity here is to take yesterday, right? Today is Thursday. Take Wednesday. And just look at all the things you did. Go to your task manager, go to your list on a notebook, and just ask yourself, where did they fall in these quadrants, right? And ask yourself, did I do anything that was high leverage, right? That really was amplified my efforts. All right, number 5, adjacent skills, right? Everyone's like, oh, learn how to code. No, I mean, coding is powerful, but with the rise of no-code tools, some of the AI stuff, it's becoming less and less important. But there are a series of skills that transcend any industry, right? I've listed a few here, public speaking being an obvious one. And I want you to know public speaking can be trained, right? When I was on Wall Street, on my reviews, performance reviews, I would always get dinged. You're not a confident speaker. You use a lot of filler words. I still do use a decent amount of filler words, crutch words, like, so. And see, I just did it there. But I learned how to become a better public speaker through repetition. In fact, when they told me that, I would actually take out my phone, and if I had a presentation to give, I would just talk my presentation into my phone and then rewatch it. It's super awkward. It's super time consuming, but I promise you, public speaking is a skill that can be learned because I experienced those challenges myself, and I've seen many, many other people do it through different exercises and practices. Design, writing, negotiation, accounting, technical sensibility. These are all adjacent skills. Your homework, and this is in the blog post, pick one and start chipping away at it, right? The best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time to start is today. So that takes us to step number 6, which is so I'm not here to tell you that AI is going to eat every single one of your jobs and it's going to rule the world and we are minutes away from singularity. What I am going to tell you is that companies tend to be slow to adapt to tools. If you are drop into the chat if you know the tool called Loom, Loom. For those of you, as you're dropping that in, for those of you who don't know Loom, if you're in the kind of tech world, startup world, you use Loom all the time. It's a video recording software. It's kind of like Snapchat for work, where you can send messages, video messages to people. You could share your screen. The thing about it, it's super clean. It's super easy to do. It's very fast. And it's a very, very effective way to communicate. In some of the coaching work I do, I work with a lot of Wall Street executives, and I'll send them Loom videos with their homework, with some follow-up questions and so on. And their minds are blown. They're like, what is this thing? They're like, wait a minute, you don't have to write an email. So something as simple as a better way to communicate is actually a very valuable insight to someone, especially someone a bit older, someone who's a little bit more out of touch with the tech trends. So figure out what these are. And this doesn't mean AI is one of these things for sure. I have used AI to write a lot of like second tier, like in email, we had to write a complaint email to a hotel and AI wrote that. Just showing people that that's possible. Summarizing meetings, a very powerful tool for AI, right? Summarizing a meeting might take you 25 minutes. It will take AI 1 minute, and it'll probably be good enough to hit send. So become that person. You want to be, this is like the Tylenol point. You want to be known by your peers as like, this person is always on top of what's going on. Now, you might not be able to use all of them, firewalls and privacy and security and VPNs and all that stuff, but especially where people are looking to do more with less resources, this is where you can shine, right? So this doesn't mean just AI. It can mean data visualization, things like Tableau. It could mean like scripting languages in like VBA and Excel. It could mean project management tools like Asana, no code like Zapier, Notion, Airtable, Coda, right? And then the communication tools like Loom and different screen sharing tools and different wiki tools, Confluence, things like that. So the more you kind of cement yourself in this area of expertise, the more people will rely on you and support you. And again, recession proof, as well as growing your career. So your homework, sorry, I keep forgetting the homework, is to pick a tool and then to present it to your colleagues as like, hey, this is a tool that I think would improve our workflow. And again, there's some categories there in the second bullet point. All right, we are on step 7. Thought leadership. No. The world does not need another influencer. The world does not need another audience builder. The world does not need another thought leader. But I think what people forget is that irrespective of where you are in your career, there is value in sharing your thoughts with your peer group, right? And so this is where social media is actually very powerful, not from the puff piece place of like, follow me, look how great I am, look at my amazing vacation and look at my latte. No, it is, I have something valuable to add to this conversation, right? And so I would encourage you to look for value-added engagement, right? This does not mean you need to start a blog, start a Substack. It wouldn't hurt, especially if you're doing it adjacent to your field of knowledge. It will help you get noticed. It is, I believe, and I've lived this, that having a thoughtful, deliberate, value-added presence online is more powerful than having a resume, right? Is an extremely powerful complement to a resume and sometimes can supplement it, right? And so think about how you might begin there, right? And an easy way to do it is with your homework, which is to just pick 5 people in your industry and engage with them in a way that adds value to the conversation, right? So someone might write a post about ChatGPT, right, in your industry, someone you follow on LinkedIn. And then you can go in and say, hey, these are 3 ways that I've seen people in our industry or in our sub-industry or in my role use ChatGPT, right? You don't have to say like ChatGPT is the end of blah, 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 and some prophetic cataclysmic, prognostication about the future of work. No, just say, these are 3 ways that I'm using it, right? Add value to the conversation in a public forum, which is how you can go build your network, build your moat, grow your presence, build your skill set. So those are our 7 steps. 7 steps. Your homework on this one is to go and pick 5 people to engage with and go add value to that conversation, right? And again, they can be, try not to make them, don't pick Bill Gates, right? Pick someone who is kind of at your level, maybe 1 notch up, 1 or 2 notches up, because remember, it's not about selling online courses. It's about building true connections with peers by adding value to the conversation. So with that, we're going to hop into the Q&A. I want to share 3 ways in which we can help you achieve many of the goals described. On the left, we have our course, Supercharge Your Productivity, which is really about 10K work and prioritization and really understanding your motivations and hitting your goals. The one in the middle, and we're going to send you a bundle that actually combines the first 2. The second in the middle is the Life Operating System, which is our turnkey system for you to collect your network, your notes, your reading lists, your key dates and milestones, your project management, right? It's a kind of turnkey productivity system that is built in Notion. And then on the third, we have group coaching. This is aimed at executives that are really at the phase of transitioning into other parts, other roles in their career, potentially other jobs. So those are 3 ways that we can help you. And obviously, we continue to write. We're heavily active on social, predominantly Twitter and Instagram, to a lesser extent, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm sorry, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. But we are always here. Our job, like in step 7, is to always add a bit of value to our peer group, our audience, our readers, our subscribers, and our followers. So we live that. This is why we do events like this for free. So without any further ado, I will stop sharing the screen and take any questions.
All right, Kay. I wanted to go ahead and give you a question we had on Instagram before it cut out. This is from Judajit. They ask, what do you think of using career coaches to explore job transitions or looking for a job after a layoff?
Yep. So as a coach, and as someone who does coaching, individual coaching, who is a coach, but is also a consumer of coaching services. I think that coaching is extremely, extremely powerful. Oftentimes it's not cheap. So you need to balance that, in the context of what your funds are. And there's all different types of coaching, right? As I said, we focus more on executives looking to make big transitions, which usually means leaving their industries or taking big risks. But there's coaches for navigating your industry. There's coaching for leadership. There's coaching for figuring out what you like. There's coaching for very specific skills. There's coaching for public speaking. There's coaching for negotiation. There's coaching for self-confidence and self-esteem boosting. So absolutely a big fan of it. Recognizing that it again, depending on who and how, it can be cheap. It's not always the cheapest, and also recognizing that you can get a lot of the impact from coaching on your own, right? I think what coaching offers is 2 things. It's a Socratic method often, so there's a lot of back and forth and the customization of it, the real challenging. And then there's the accountability. The example that I love to use is fitness trainer, personal trainers. There's not a single unique move that a personal trainer can bring you in a one-on-one session that you can't find on YouTube. But what does the personal trainer do? They customize it, they bring accountability, and they bring motivation and inspiration. So that comes at a premium. Some people really need that. Some people kind of need it. Some people don't need that. And so think about how that would fit into your broader needs and budget.
Awesome. Mark Justin is here in the room. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, or I can ask it. It's up to you.
Well, I'm not shy to talk.
All right, go for it.
Great ideas here. I mean, I ran into your your videos and your website. I don't know, a couple of months ago. The challenge,
Awesome.
yeah. So and I love the time the quadrant. The quadrant for time. I've been trying to use that on a weekly basis to prioritize my time. Sometimes more successful, sometimes less successful. I'm just being honest about it.
Hey, you're just being human about it.
Yeah. So, but my overall question is, I mean, there's so many great ideas here. And so I'm a music producer in the sync licensing area. That's what I do. Sole proprietor. I work with many different people. My strength has always been I've worked in the music business for most of my life on and off. So the strength of it has been working with other people, supporting them, pitching a hand in, that kind of thing. Because that's the way this business works. I know any business works that way. So the question I have for you, I'm perplexed how to start applying these ideas in terms of time allocated and priorities of action in a kind of more systematic way. I mean, that's honestly, because life is really busy. Every week I make a plan. I have goals. I have priorities. I work out projects, but there's so much technology to learn. And because the music scene is changing so quickly. So in this context, I wonder if you had any ideas.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we could have a 5-hour conversation about every single point, every single slide in this presentation. So where does one begin? And so I would say that there's a few ways to think about that. The first is to kind of, to borrow the language of Simon Sinek, is to start with why, right? Why? And in your question, Mark, you said, you implied that there's all these different technologies or things to learn, right? And so I would go a step further. Again, this is where a coach or someone with a more Socratic way of interacting would say, is like, well, why? Let's just use a very banal example, or maybe it's not a banal example, which would be like TikTok. TikTok has changed the way music is distributed, and discovered, and it probably, I would argue, it's changed the way it's created. Again, probably more in like pop culture sense, maybe not in like classical violin. But I would imagine that people sit in a room and they kind of try to reverse engineer. They're like, how does this hook turn into a dance? How does this dance turn into a meme? Who's the influencers that we're going to pitch this to? And like, instead of starting with the song, right? And so that might be one of a bazillion different examples, right? I don't know if you saw, there's a AI generated track with The Weeknd and Drake, and it actually sounds like The Weeknd and Drake, and it's kind of catchy track. So that's another thing in the land of music. That's
one of the big challenges. I'll be honest, that's one of the big challenges.
Yeah.
Because I decided myself to get into AI because I've seen this because I'm older, and I've seen in the music business, technology changes and then people get wiped out with negativity. They get wiped out with, I'm waiting for the big bands to come back, but they're not coming back, baby. They're not. Anyway.
Well, you have the right approach. And here, I wish that there was I think that the challenge, though, with many of these things is that they can become all-consuming, and they can turn into shiny new toys that distract you away from the thing that really matters right now, right? So there's an element of playing for today, right? Where maybe today the traditional model of X, Y, and Z in music is still what brings in the cash and moves the needle, but have that one foot in the door, right? So we're not, in our company, I'll give you an example, Mark. In our company, we're not like, one of our colleagues is obsessed with AI. I'm more like you. It's like, let's make sure that we don't get blindsided by this thing in 5 years. And so what we're doing is we're just like trying to find ways to incorporate it in kind of a playful, additional, supplementary way without becoming obsessed with it. Right. And so maybe the starting question that I've asked the team is like, anytime you need to write something, just think to yourself, what would ChatGPT say to this? Doesn't mean write everything you're going to write through ChatGPT, but it's just like a subtle mindset shift. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that it's shown up with is like it actually hasn't shown up for me in my work, but it's actually shown up a ton in my personal life. like just like these emails that I have to send to other parents and like even like texts to summarize like a bunch of stuff. Just throw that thing into ChatGPT and then like send it off, right? So it's given me a vision of like what's possible and what's not possible, right? There's nowhere close from a creative. I'm a writer. From a creative side, I haven't seen anything that feels threatening. It just feels like a nice 10% booster for a lot of the things that I'm doing. So have that constraint, start seeing the world slightly differently, try to bring a little fun to it. We just installed Midjourney, which is for creating AI art. And we're just going to like, playfully just come up with like, let's all try to create an image for this event. And everyone's going to come up with their own way. And then we'll compare notes and see like, oh, like this looks cool. Oh, it's funny how you described it this way and that. And it'll be a learning experience without it being all consuming with a slight layer of fun.
Okay. By the way, I lived in Manhattan Beach for 4 years. A great place to live.
Awesome.
That's where you live. I've been down to the pier many times.
Awesome. I love Manhattan Beach. Well, thank you, Mark. We're going to have some LA meetups in the next quarter or so. So if you're still in LA, we'll...
No, I'm in Arizona now.
Oh, you're in Arizona now. Okay.
Northern Arizona. I'm not.
Gotcha. Also a beautiful part of the country.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. While we wait to see if there's any other last minute questions, I'm curious if you want to tackle, the recession and the economy and like how people are feeling about that and why would that affect their employment?
Mm-hmm.
You want to touch on that?
Yeah, it's a strange, I think that the pandemic was this kind of earth-changing event, so to speak, or such a big global event with a lot of loss and a lot of trauma and a lot of uncertainty involved in it. But there was this other thing that many people kind of didn't fully realize was it was actually, and for many industries, particularly around knowledge work, it was Goldilocks, meaning that people had an abundance of time, they had an abundance of cash, and they were always online. So if your business catered, so obviously that bodes really poorly for restaurants, museums, and concert halls and bars, but it bodes really well for online, marketing firms, streamers, YouTubers, musicians, and so on. And I think what happens with a lot of people is when you're fish in the water effect, right? When you've spent so much time in that environment, you just think that that's normal. And I've spoken to so many people and myself, our business included, where whatever happened in those two and a half years economically, they just like, if it went up like this, they just took the line and then they just kept drawing it up. And guess what? So much of that has changed, right? People are back in the office. You can't just, people are tightening their wallets, inflation, geopolitics, you name it, on and on and on, climate change, so on. I think that it's really hard to leave a state where we didn't realize how good things were because of the layer of the pandemic. We didn't realize how good things were economically. And now there is this kind of like rude awakening of sorts, which is our best forecasts are collapsing. It doesn't matter whether you're like Google or RadReads, right? Like everyone got forecasting wrong. And so from that, there is a natural grieving of what the time that was. There's also the uncertainty of how are we going to get out of this, right? It's not, there's no end in sight, which is another frustrating thing for humans, which is like, well, tell me when this ends, right? Tell me when it goes back. And then there's a third question, which is like, what if it never goes back? And again, it's a little bit like what Mark says, like there are people just waiting for like the old days of the record industry to just come back. Like, guess what? Music will continue to be discovered on TikTok. The cat is out of the bag. It's not going back. There's no going back. And so some people view that with grief. Some people view that with fear. Some people view it with excitement. There's no right or wrong answer to it. But again, I want to talk about through the lens of professional development, professional career, there is an adaptability that is required because the rate of change of things, right? I mean, think about it. ChatGPT didn't come out of nowhere. People have been working on this for many, many decades, but the speed at which it was like, no one really talks about AI to 20% of the workforce is using it on a daily basis is unfathomable. And so I would say, I don't know if that directly answers your question, but it is this kind of collection of emotions, which all are valid. And then you layer just like, look, we had to let go of people, which means we directly impacted people's livelihoods, right? And that is unfortunate circumstance of what's happening. And again, that's a big part of why we wanted to put this event together, is to give people hope, give people tools, give people tactics, so that they can stay ahead of it, readjust, reposition.
Wonderful. Well, as we wrap up, I think it's a great opportunity for us to share that we will be doing an AI event next, right? Want to tell them about that?
We will. And again, we're not hopping on the AI bandwagon to make money, to make a quick buck. There's a lot of that happening right now. And that's not the game we play. We play long games. But in the long game, it's very hard to see how AI goes away. And it's very hard to see how it doesn't become more deeply entrenched in our lives, especially if you spend a couple hours with ChatGPT, a couple hours with Midjourney. You're like, oh my God, right? It's like, you could see, we haven't been able to recreate this, but you could see how fashion photography could be replaced by Midjourney, where you say, show me, an African-American woman and an Asian male that are 35 years old with tattoos holding this kind of bag over a Bali backdrop. You're at like 90% relative to the photo, right? Maybe close to, some people would say 100. We haven't been able to replicate that because it's not our business. So that's not going, that cat is out of the bag, right? And so we want to do it in a way that is accessible. We want to do it in a way that's just like, how do you take one or two steps, right? If you want to build a Mark Justin chatbot, this is not the place to do it. There are other people offering that for thousands and thousands of dollars. And that would probably be a useful bot based on, my limited interactions with Mark. But at the same time, it's not going to move the needle for our business and most of the people in our audience. But what will move the needle might be like, how do you stop doing kind of like tier 2 marketing copy, right? How do you write faster emails? How do you summarize meeting notes? How do you improve your writing? Those are the types of questions that we will answer next month. And it will be free.
Thank you so much, Kay.
Is there a date for that?
Not yet.
Not yet. It'll be in May. We will send out an email.
Yes. Awesome. And to all of you still following, like I said, we're super active on socials. I really have personally made a shift on social to not be so billboardy this year, where it's just like pushing out content into like a void, like advertising, and really coming in and engaging and building community and meeting people, learning from people, particularly on Twitter and to a lesser extent on Instagram. All right. Well, thank you all. We'll be sending the replay out. Thank you to those of you watching the replay, and thank you, Marion, for coordinating this all. We'll see you in May.